morning. Glad to see you here again today. And today I want to talk to you about why it's a very good thing sometimes to have no idea what you're talking about. We're often told, write what you know, or if you don't know what you're talking about, don't write about it, or any number of those things. It's gotten to such an extreme point that some authors have even been shouted down before their book even launched just because they started talking about something that somebody else said, "Oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. You can't write about that. It's race relations and you're not a person with a race." Or it's about sexual gender bending and you don't have a sexual gender bend. It's like, okay, no. Dude, it's called fiction for a reason. But beyond that, the reason why it's sometimes very good to have no idea what you're doing is because then you have nothing getting in the way of telling you what you can't do. It's very open and very freeing for the mind. I'll give you an example of this from real life. I don't have the name of the professor, but you could look it up. Just look up a student solves a millennium equation. The student hadn't shown up for class that day. He'd been running late or he was sick or something. So he comes in and he copies all the notes off of the board, and there's this one big formula there. He says, "Ooh, that one looks tricky," but he figures it's part of the homework assignment. So he goes back to his room and he looks at it and he works it through and he solves it. Sure, cool. Comes into class the next day and the professor looks at this and goes, "You just solved one of the hardest equations on the planet, which means you get $1 million." And the student goes, "Oh, I thought it was just homework." Which goes to show you that it pays to do your math homework, for starters. But also, he didn't hear that this was an impossible problem. He didn't hear that this was one of the biggest projects on the face of the planet, mathematically speaking, and he had no idea how important the work was that he did. He had no idea what he was doing. He just did it. If we want to go into science fiction and fantasy, let's look at, what was it, episode 2 or 3 of the original Star Trek series. They needed to get down to the planet, but their shuttle props weren't there yet. So somebody said, "Well, why don't we just have this machine that, like, they go from here to there and it's not a problem?" They said, "Okay, sure, we don't have the things we actually use." And that was how they came up with the idea for a point to point transport system, which now people have put so much theory and so much work into. They had no idea what they were doing, and you can talk about that phrase. They had no idea the long-term ramifications, but really, they had no idea how it worked. They had no idea how effective it was going to be. They had no idea, okay, what's the physics of this? What's it going to look like? How are we going to make the special effects for it? How are we going to make it with little? They didn't know. They didn't care. They just said, "Okay, we got to get this done. Let's do it." Like that. So I think that's a big benefit of having no idea what you're doing. For starters, from the first example, you have nobody telling you it can't be done. You look at a thing as a pure problem. Like, oh my goodness, there's a gigantic shark in the ocean. What are we going to do? Let's make a giant robot shark to go after it. Okay, it was a dumb movie, but it still got done. Or you have things like, okay, there's a giant meteor heading towards Earth. Okay, can we drill into it? Maybe. Okay, let's make a movie called Armageddon, and that movie is gonna rock. And they came up with ways to keep people pressed down on the meteor. Probably a real space physics engine person could tell you that it was entirely wrong, and here's how it was wrong and all that. Nobody cared, except the people who were picky. They did it. That's the wonderful thing about creativity, the wonderful thing about fiction. You just go ahead and make it work. Another example from my own life. I play guitar. I don't play it very well, but I also don't go through all of the practice books. I didn't have lessons. I've picked up bits and pieces from here and there, friends and family, and songs that interested me along the way. But I can pick up my guitar and go, no, this isn't the sound I'm looking for. That's close enough, and then I just move it up or down the strings a little bit and change it. And I have no idea what's supposed to work. And one time, a friend of mine in college looked at a piano composition of mine and said, "This isn't supposed to go like this." And I played it out for her, and I said, "Sounds just fine." And she said, "Well, but it's not supposed to go like that." You realize that that's literally what Debussy did. Some of the most beautiful piano music in the Western world, probably on the planet, was made by a guy who never took music theory. He just played, and if he liked what he heard, he wrote it down. And if he didn't like it, he fixed it. You don't have to know every single detail of what you're going into, of what you're doing, in order to create, especially because you're creating something new. Go ahead. Don't be afraid to not know things. But be bold about not knowing them too. You're going to have so much fun if you don't limit yourself to what you're qualified for. And you're going to see a lot more and a lot different things than everybody else out there. If you say, I don't need to follow these directions, I don't need to do all the research. If you want to, go ahead, fine, that's awesome. I mean, personally, I've got a story that's set in Iceland that I want to go to Iceland to actually see it, get a feel for the people, etc. But it's not required. Go ahead, write what you have no idea about. Write, compose, create. Go have a lot of fun with it. This is Chris Schallert, Idea Engine, encouraging you to take something old and make something new. Peace out.